How crucial is social development for what it is that you're trying to achieve?
It's critical. I mean, for a department that I've been given the honor to head, it's absolutely critical. And I tell people that, you know, we have the power to take young people off the streets. We have the power through sports, through arts, through entertainment, to level the playing field. I mean, we were speaking earlier that transformation is so critical, but through sport and the arts, it's one of the few platforms that we have to actually equalize the playing field. You don't need to be rich to have a talent. And this is what we say a lot. And you're able to create a platform where both rich and old, young, and across gender, across racial lines can come together and really compete in a fair platform. But also amongst the other things that they get to do is to also learn camaraderie in the sports field, because you learn how to work as a team. You depend on your team members. So it's not just about you, but importantly is the self-discipline that comes with engaging, whether it's in sports, it's in entertainment and so forth. Because it's so highly competitive, you need to be able to master yourself first and foremost.
Money is relative, and 100 Rand might be a lot to you, 1,000 Rand might be a lot to somebody, but R1 billion is a lot to everybody. And correct me if I'm wrong, that is the allocated amount that has been given to you for the financial term. And I have no doubt that, unfortunately, to the dismay of many people, R1 billion might not go very far, as crazy as that sounds.
Yeah.
Try and, if you may, make a mathematical pie for me and explain to me how and where R1 billion is going to go.
You know, a lot of people think 1 billion. It sounds like it's a lot, but it really isn't. It really, and I know that sounds silly for me to say that, but when you consider how vast our portfolio is, it's sports, it's arts, it's recreation, and it's culture. So we have a wide spectrum that we need to look at. You know that there's challenges, there's difficulties in the arts, and we need to be able to take young people off the streets, not just all young, and maybe I say young a lot because we were speaking about the younger generation earlier, but we really need to make sure that we utilize the spend across the various generations. You've got old people that are also in sports. They might not do it competitively, but they do it as a recreation, and they too need spend to be allocated towards them. You've got young people that want to compete professionally. You've got infrastructure that needs to be in place. The biggest backlog that we have is on infrastructure, and that costs a lot of money. When you look at our communities, your townships and so forth, which are really in the periphery and have been in the periphery because of our historical makeup, there's a lot of infrastructure that we need to pump in there, especially if we want to make sure that we take young kids and we're able to redirect them and channel their energy towards positive activity. I mean, I always say that, you know, it's so unfortunate that in our schools, not all schools have what is called PT. So if you go to a Model C or a private school, you know that your daily schedule is that you do your academic work. By 2 o'clock, you're done, you then engage in sports. And so your day finishes at around 6, while the child who goes to a township doesn't have that luxury. They're end of school at around 2 and they're left with the streets to loiter. And what do you expect them to do? They engage in all sex, drugs, and alcohol. And we want to redirect that, to change that narrative and ensure that we get all young people participating within sports. And like I said, it's not just young people, it's also the elderly, because you've got grandparents who are taking care of their grandkids. And they essentially have become parents to these kids, either because their parents are working, or maybe their parents might have died because of HIV/AIDS. So effectively, you've got an elderly generation that is taking care of kids who are not just the grandparents, but their parents. So we need to invest in their health, which means they need to live longer. We need to make sure there's sporting facilities open for them. We've spoken about outside gyms that we want to create. So we want to do that because we know that they can't use their grant to pay off a gym membership. That's a lot of money. But through government, we're able to make sure that there's facilities in place to take care of this vast majority and this intergenerational grouping that we deal with. We also do libraries. Libraries are very costly. And we know that we want to increase and inculcate a culture of reading amongst society. So we are focusing a lot on that. We also speak about libraries of the future. And that's how we look at how do we bring in technology within our libraries, but importantly, how do you turn them from being white elephants into centers that people can want to go to? How do we increase the traffic into our libraries? So that does take a lot of money.
For those that have been perhaps either covering the sporting community and the sporting background for quite some time, or those perhaps that have been engaged in it, they will know that for many, many years we've been hearing the narrative of how there is not enough money coming into the sports portfolio. With the amalgamation now of arts and culture and recreation, does that not then open you up for the possibility of potentially stretching yourself overly thin on what was already perhaps a tight budget for just an individual sporting code.
It does. But that's why we also have to take the initiative to look out to the private sector. And one of the things we'll be doing next week is to meet with the private sector. The great thing, like you're saying, I mean, a lot of people have been coming forward and they have a lot of interest in what we do. So there's various entities that have come on board to say, how can we work with you? We have CSI, but we'd like to channel it towards something that's developmental, that's productive, and ensure that we are also part and parcel of this agenda to grow the nation, which is really quite great. So we are speaking to the private sector because we know our pockets don't run deep. Theirs also doesn't, but at least they have more than we do. And if we can all come together, then we can make sure that we focus on what is needed, infrastructure being first and foremost, like I indicated, so that we're able to know that there are facilities that are available.
I really hope that this is just the introductory phase for you and I to be able to have some beautifully robust conversations going forward. Unfortunately, time is not on our side tonight, so I need to thank you and say good night and have a wonderful evening. We really do look forward to having you back on Newsroom Africa Channel 405. And please don't be a stranger, come through whenever you're around.
I'm going to hold you to that and invite you to my next visit.
I will absolutely do that. Thank you very much. That is the MEC for Sport here in Gauteng. And Mbali Hlophe joining us live in studio. Plenty more to discuss, she says, in the future. We look forward to having her back on the show.